The Murder in the Elevator. Chapter 1. The Fall from Above. Washington was cold in the December night. The 20-story Sterling building still had a few lights on, where ambitious people were working late before the year ended. Captain David Miller got the call at 11:47 p.m. The dispatcher's voice was tense. Someone fell from the top floor of the Sterling building. The victim died instantly. When David arrived, the scene was already cordoned off. Under the forensic team's lights, the body of a middle-aged man lay still on the technical floor roof, about 20 meters from the ground. Broken neck, dead immediately. Harold Finch, 52 years old, CEO of Potomac Financial Group. Young Detective Marcus Chan reported, notebook in hand. One of the most powerful people in Washington. He worked late tonight. His personal secretary, Angela Morrison, was the last person to see him alive. David put on his jacket and walked toward the building lobby. The secretary, around 30, pale-faced, sat curled up on a stone bench, her hands still shaking. "Please tell me what you saw," David said gently. I stayed working with Mr. Finch until about 10:40. He told me to go home because he needed to go to the rooftop to take a private call. I saw him get into the elevator on the 10th floor. It was 10:47 p.m. He was wearing a gray suit, holding his phone. Ms. Morrison sobbed. "I never thought that would be the last time." David nodded, then went with Marcus to the security room. An old security guard named Wilfred was waiting, his hands trembling as he pointed at the screen. "Here, sir, the 10th floor hallway camera. I've watched it dozens of times." On the black and white screen, Harold Finch appeared. He walked down the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, his face tense. He pressed the elevator button, waited a few seconds, then stepped inside. The door closed. No one else. Absolutely no one. "Check the cameras on other floors," David ordered. Wilfred rewound the tape. The elevator stopped at the 15th floor. No one got on. Stopped at the 18th floor. No one got on. Finally, it stopped at the rooftop. The door opened. The rooftop hallway was empty. No one stepped out. David squinted. So where did he go? Did he just disappear? "Watch this," Marcus said. At 10:52, the elevator came down from the rooftop. It stopped at the first floor 5 minutes later. When the door opened, it was completely empty inside. David was silent for a long time. He stared at the screen where Harold Finch had mysteriously vanished. No one saw him leave. So, who pushed him from the rooftop? An invisible person. "This is the strangest case of my career," David whispered. "He got into the elevator alone. No one saw him get out anywhere. But he died on the rooftop. It doesn't make sense." He turned to Marcus. "Tomorrow morning I want to check the entire camera system of this building. Every single angle. And I want to know their maintenance history for the last 3 months. Something's not right here." Outside, the Washington night was still quiet. But inside David Miller, a storm was brewing. Chapter 2. The Ghost in the Elevator. The next morning, David arrived at the Sterling building early. He stood at the base of the tower, looking up to where Harold Finch had fallen. An idea suddenly came to him. "Marcus, I want to go to the rooftop, and I want to go by elevator." They stood in the cabin, David pressing the rooftop button. As the elevator began to move, he looked up at the ceiling. A metal emergency hatch, quite large, could be opened from inside. "Think about it," David said. "If someone was on top of the elevator, they could climb down any time the elevator stopped." Marcus's eyes widened. You mean the killer was on top of the elevator the whole time? When they reached the rooftop, David asked a technician to take them to the top of the cabin. In the flashlight's beam, they found fresh scratches on the paint and a small blue thread caught in the hinge. We found what we needed. David smiled for the first time in 12 hours. The killer was here. He waited for the elevator to stop at some floor, climbed down, did the crime, and climbed back up before the door opened on the rooftop. But their joy was short-lived. When they reviewed the footage from every floor where the elevator stopped, the 5th, 10th, and 18th floors, no one appeared coming out of the elevator. If he had climbed down at the 5th, 10th floor to push Finch, he should have appeared on the 5th, 10th floor hallway camera when he jumped out. But no. Nothing. It's impossible, Marcus muttered. Is he a ghost? David sat down, watching the 5th, 10th floor footage repeatedly. There was a moment, about 2 seconds, when the image blurred slightly as the elevator door opened. Very subtle, hard to notice if you weren't paying attention. Call me the building's camera technician, David said. I want to know who maintained this system. A list was provided. One name stood out. Leo Thompson, freelance technician, hired to maintain the camera system a month ago. He had worked for many office buildings and had a petty theft record. David showed the 5th, 10th floor footage to a technical expert. Conclusion: this camera's angle had been subtly adjusted, creating a perfect blind spot covering the area in front of the elevator. The adjustment was made exactly 1 week before the murder. Leo Thompson created a blind spot for himself, David said. He's not just the killer. He installed the cameras. He knew how to avoid surveillance. An arrest warrant was issued. Leo Thompson, 34 years old, with a leopard tattoo on his left arm, had disappeared from his Southeast Washington apartment last night. But David knew he couldn't have gone far. A petty thief with no money, no connections, wouldn't know where to hide. The hunt had just begun. Chapter 3. The Fatal Blind Spot. 3 days later, Leo Thompson was caught at a cheap motel in suburban Arlington. He didn't resist, just silently raised his hands when police stormed in. In the interrogation room, under the pale yellow light, he sat curled up, his hands still, shaking. I didn't mean to kill him, Leo said, his voice hoarse. I'm just a petty thief. I didn't want to kill anyone. David sat across from him, waiting silently. Leo confessed. He had joined the camera maintenance company with one goal: to create blind spots in the Sterling building for burglaries. He had subtly adjusted hallway cameras on floors 10, 15, and 18 floors with many expensive offices to create perfect hidden corners. No one noticed because the changes were so small. I planned everything, Leo said, staring into space. I knew when guards patrolled, when employees left. That night, I hid on top of the elevator from 9 p.m., waiting for the building to empty so I could break into an office on the 18th floor. But then Mr. Finch appeared, David said. Leo nodded. Yes, I heard the elevator stop at the 10th floor, then someone stepped in. I held my breath, hiding on top. The elevator went up. I planned to wait until he got off at some floor before climbing down. But he went straight to the rooftop. When the elevator stopped at the 5th, 10th floor, I thought it was a good chance to switch to the other cabin. I knew that one was also coming up. Leo paused, swallowing. I opened the hatch, climbed down. I didn't expect Mr. Finch to have his back to me, but when I stepped onto the floor, he suddenly turned around because he heard a noise. We looked at each other. His eyes showed panic. Shock, he was about to scream. I panicked and lunged forward to cover his mouth. And he fell, David said. Leo burst into tears. I didn't push him, we struggled. He stumbled backward when the elevator door opened at the rooftop. I reached out to grab him, but I couldn't. He fell out, over the railing, down to the technical floor roof. I just stood frozen for a few seconds, then panicked and climbed back on top of the elevator. I couldn't look down. Then how did you escape? I stayed on top of the elevator. It went down to the basement, where there was an exit. To the parking lot. I knew there were no cameras there. I had checked before. I climbed out, ran through the parking lot, and escaped through the maintenance exit. I thought I was safe. I had created blind spots for the cameras. No one saw me. No one knew I was there. David looked at Leo for a long time. A petty thief. One fatal mistake, and a case that became a perfect mystery only because he was too smart at hiding himself. You know, Leo, David said, if you hadn't created those blind spots, we would have seen you on camera, and the case would have been much simpler. But your own planning made it a perfect mystery, and it's also what got you caught. Leo lowered his head. In the small interrogation room, only the sound of sobbing remained, the sound of someone who accidentally became a killer. When David walked out, Marcus was waiting. Captain, it's over. A petty thief, an accidental fall, and a camera. System he built himself. David nodded, but something still felt strange inside. That's right, Marcus. In the criminal world, sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't a perfect plan, but an accidental mistake. And what gets criminals caught isn't the traces they leave behind, but what they try too hard to hide. Outside, Washington had entered. Winter. The warm yellow lights of the city began to turn on, as if nothing had happened. But inside the Sterling building, the elevator still ran silently, carrying the secret of a fateful night that no camera could fully capture.